Welcome to the Power of Music podcast. Brought to you by JM International. Get ready to explore conversations with those making a difference through music.
Hello, and welcome everyone to the JM Jeunesse Musicale podcast, a global network of NGOs that empowers young people through music across all boundaries. Before we start, I would like to ask all of our listeners for a favor. It would mean the world to us if you could rate and review the podcast so that we can be discovered by even more people who believe in the power of music. Today we are recording from the beautiful MUPA, the Palace of Arts in Budapest, where the Bach the Future Conference is taking place. The conference aims to connect and inform institutions and related professionals about the upcoming trends in the classical music field, to keep up with all the rapid changes of the digital era, and to learn about and be inspired by new methods and best practices from all around the world. This episode will be slightly different than normal, as we will be joined by several speakers from the conference. Our first guest is Michael Christensen, a classical musician and the Election Commission Chair and Classical Committee member of JMI. He's also one of the initiators of JMI's Encore.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Michael. Can you tell us a bit about what has been your journey into music?
Well, I started off with music when I was very, very young. I come from a quite musical family. I've started playing different instruments and I ended up with percussion, which I thought was the most exciting instrument group of the whole world. It's got such much variety of different instruments. It's like a rainbow with thousands of colors, and I can still surely say that about my subject. That's my profession, percussion. I love it. That was my way through music, and through my percussion playing, I've just become. I've joined so many different activities where should I start?
Maybe tell a bit about how you entered JMI, how you got to know JMI.
Well, actually, I was in JMI many years ago. I was establishing, in the western part of Denmark, I was establishing a youth fraction of the JMI, where I was responsible of coordinating concerts in my hometown, which is the fifth biggest town in Denmark. And I did a lot of concerts with classical music, with rhythmic music, folk music, so many, all different kind of genres. And then I left GMI, or Youth and Music, which is called in Denmark, for some years because I got very involved in the performing part of doing music. I was playing percussion seriously for quite a lot of years and got into conducting, orchestral conducting, and for that reason that was where my focus was. And then it was must have been back in 2012, I was asked to come back into GMI because, people remembered me from all the things we did way back. And I said, yeah, why not? Of course. I want to make a difference, and is there where I can make a difference? It's surely through music, because that's my thing.
And if you look back on all these years of involvement with JMI, what is your best memory?
I have many memories with JMI, I must say. But I will think that if you look into the recent years, it would be the establishment and the development of the program which is now called Encore. I think definitely that's a milestone in the GMI story when it comes to classical music, and I can tell you much more about it. But I would say that's a highlight, and especially the first Encore we ever had, which was in Berlin in 2019. That was just such an eye-opener and just confirmed to all of us who were involved in the program, this is the way to go. And it's a program that can only be developed there. So it's flexible. It opened up so many possibilities, and that's what we want to keep high. That it does. We don't want to be stiffen about what it is. The Encore concept keeps changing, and that's what it's all about.
So we're here in Hungary at the Bach to the Future conference, and I think it's beautiful that Encore is an integral part of the conference. But for the people listening who don't know exactly what Encore is, What is it?
Yeah, Encore. It's a conglomerate, I must say, of all kind. It's a melting pot of ideas with the basis in new ways in classical music. Because Encore was actually born. It was given birth by the program, which was called New Ways in Classical Music. And behind the thoughts behind New Ways in Classical Music was, as it says, new ways in classical music. How do we reach out to people in general? Across ages, across all kind of being involved in music. How do we make a melting pot where we can contain all these different ideas of how to make music in general? It was a process. It took time to find out because there were so many ideas. And how do we make it into one project? Well, we had one thing in common, that was classical music. Because we have this classical music committee in GMI, which was founded in 2015, and it took over from the World Youth Symphony Orchestra because it was put down in 2015 due to the reason that it was workloaded. There was a lot of things to do with it, and there was also competition out in Europe with other youth symphony orchestras. For that reason, we thought, well, should we keep the Youth Symphony Orchestra going, or should we just close down the Youth Symphony Orchestra? A grand idea, and then make a U-turn and go into small ensembles, go into new ways of thinking classical music. And out from that, we developed the Encore program, and the Encore program is all about innovation. It's about sustainability. It's about social responsibility. It's all, and it keeps changes according to what is the focus of the society nowadays. At the very moment, it's way of green thinking. Could we involve that? Could we open up to people who can combine the idea of music and green thinking? Innovation when it comes to new audiences, innovation when it comes to new venues to perform classical music, into new ways of thinking classical music. At the event in Berlin in 2019, we had a cooperation with the Norddeutsche Jugendphilharmonie, which is a youth symphony orchestra in Germany, and they made Petrushka in a new version before the break, the ordinary Petrushka, and then they made the #2 Petrushka after the break, which was absolutely wow! It was mind blowing. It was and having young people engaged due to the mere reason that they do classical music in another way just got to show we have a right to exist, and Encore is so much different things. It's as I said, it's green thinking, it's sustainability, it's innovation, which is primarily the thing that we focus on. Try to think things new, but also always with the background of classical music. But then again, what is classical music? You know, if you put the question forward, and especially to young students, young people today, they have such a different interpretation of what classical music is, and that's what is so nice, because I think already there's so much narrowness connected to classical music. It has to be in a certain way. It has to be performed in a certain way. The venues have to be in a certain way. The way people even dress as audience has to be in a certain way in some connections. All that we want to reflect about. And if we can do anything, new ways of thinking, that's what we praise. And the Encore is actually the materialized version of all this. And this year we had different applicants than we had last year, and next year, if we have it next year, hopefully, then we will have again other applicants. And that's the wonderfulness about this. It's a rainbow with a lot of colors, and it keeps changing all the time. And it is whatever we make of it. And the people behind, well, I've been in the business here for some years, but the people behind the whole Encore keep changing all the time too. The representation of the people in the classical committee keep changing all the time. We are 14 people now from 14 different countries. Wow, come on. It's just really, it's just great. And for every Encore, we meet new people, we get new people engaged. We try to keep relationship with these people that we meet. So it's like an ongoing thing, and
So Encore brings together all these young people that have an idea or an inspiration, and then there's a bunch of trainers, and I'm lucky to be one of them. That helps
One of the
them.
good ones. Ricardo is one of the good ones.
Thank you so
Very
much.
good.
That tries to help them to think more entrepreneurial, that helps them to craft their pitch, and then they pitch today at the Bach to the Future conference. And what stood out to me in the past few days is that a lot of the young classical enthusiasts, they have this big passion. They're also somewhat afraid that their classical music is slowly losing popularity. It's, maybe someone said it's becoming a dinosaur. Is this something, a feeling you share? And how does the Encore fit into this view?
Well, that's the wonderful thing about it, because it's a challenge. I don't consider it a problem. And I hear that on a daily basis because I'm into classical music in my profession. I think we take it as a challenge. You know, it's something to be challenged, and I think that the dangerous thing is when we get to not care about it, when we just are indifferent of the evolution of the change. Once we are that, and we just, out of pure laziness or giving up thing or whatever, say, well, we cannot do anything. But I feel just the opposite. I think we are surrounded by young people today who want to make a change. We see so many people who say, oh, there not so many people come to classical concerts, not so many get into the conservatoriums. What do we do? People are thinking, wow, that's a challenge. That's great. It's new time. So what do we do? And I think the interpretation of classical music as what you perceive as classical music might very well be very different in just 20, 30 years from now. But that's what it's all about. That makes music alive. If we had the same interpretation of classical music 100 years ago and today, what would that be? That would be a terrible world. And I think we've got so much enthusiasm out there, so much want to change classical music. And that's what the Encore project all picks up. It picks up frustration, it picks up, I want to do something about it. It picks up the love for classical music, but foremost, it keeps up people who are engaged. And that's what it's all about, being engaged. Make a change. Do something about it. Smile, laugh, cry, whatever. But we know we want the reactions. We don't want people to be indifferent. And if there's something you could say about the Encore project, then it's surely that it's not indifferent. It wants to make a change. The reason why it exists is because it all consists of people who want to change it. If we don't have the people behind it, if we don't have the young people engaged in it, what is Encore worth? Nothing. But it's because we have all this, got so much enthusiasm and so much engagement out there. We just want to pick it up. And a way to pick it up is to low practically actually establish a concept like Encore. And we're trying to do at least one every year. There's a lot of low practical issues to it, that, it costs to do it. And we want to also have it in as many different countries as possible. But that's a low practical problem. You're asking about the whole idea about the Encore and the situation with the classical music. I never feel that people give up and say, well, that's just too bad. Let's just put down classical music. Let's put down the conservatoriums. No way. People think just the opposite. And I would hate that if there's so much enthusiasm there that is not picked up. That's what we think is our duty, to pick it up. Pick up the enthusiasm. Make people talk. Make people talk together, across borders. That's a wonderful thing about JMI. You get young people who talk about across borders. You get this relation across the world. And wow. What else organization can offer that? No, I can't think of any. It's the biggest NGO when it comes to music and youth in the world. And it's something to be very, very proud of, I think.
Last question. Very short, because I know you have a flight to catch.
Exactly.
As always, what is the power of music?
The power of music? I think the power of music is what you say. The music has power, if I put it in another way. The music has power. It's something that when there are no words anymore, when the words stop, you can't explain what you do music. Music can say something that words can't say.
Love it. Thank you so much, Michael.
And for the next segment, I will be joined by Alexandra Ivanov, a voice coach, music journalist, and author at Papageno. originally from the US, but now living in Hungary.
My whole life has been in music. My mother was an opera singer. My father was a very fine pianist, although he was professionally a surgeon. My aunt was a professional violinist, and my first teacher, when I was 5, I learned the violin. I attended 2 different conservatories in the United States where I made a long progression from music theory and composition to singing to playing several instruments. And so my whole life has been in music. And then I went to New York where I was a performer for 17 years, basically. And I was at that point singing, and I was doing everything classical. I was doing commercials. I was doing jazz. I was doing Broadway shows, off-Broadway shows, off-Broadway shows. So that was a life in performance, in that particular area of the world. In 2007, I left the United States, went to Turkey, because at that point I was also an agent for 6 international pianists, and I booked a concert tour for a Russian pianist in Turkey. So that was my first discovery of that country, and I fell in love with the country and the people and the exotic atmosphere that I had never ever witnessed before. So
You lived in Istanbul?
I lived in Istanbul from 2007 to 2014. And that's where I got my start as a journalist for a paper called Today's Zaman, which no longer exists because it was the opposition paper and it got crushed by the government. Mm-hmm. And so it was a very tense time. All the journalists that were employed by that paper basically left the country because we were under threat, and all of the owners were put into prison. So that doesn't speak too well for the situation there at the time. And so I came to Berlin for about a year and a half, and I was still writing for that newspaper until it was shut down March 4th of 2016. And then Berlin and I just parted ways, and I came to Budapest into the end of 2015. And to my absolute delight, I discovered that there were 12 professional symphony orchestras here, and it was just a gold mine of musical wonders and treasures. And I have earned 2 different diplomas in music from 2 different conservatories, and I never learned Hungarian music. So this was this has been now 7 years of great opportunity to learn everything that I can about Hungarian music. So Ligeti, Kodai, of course, all of Liszt, but also, of course, everything in Bartók, which, I go to see. I've seen Bluebeard's Castle at least 6 times in different, stagings of it. So I can't wait to hear another one because it has so many. It's like Bach, it has so many different interpretations. So I'm writing now as a journalist for papageno.hu online, and because the owner, David Zsoldos, I'll give him some credit. He wants to have several languages involved. So other than the original Hungarian, it's been around for more than 5 years now, we're having a lot of English text as well. And I think it will develop further, probably in German, etc. So that is, in a nutshell, my trajectory in the music world.
It's a wonderful story, also involving many countries. As a journalist in classical music, what are you most excited about at this moment?
I'm most excited about what Fazıl Say does as an example. There are others as well, but he's the best one because he's actively mixing genres from different cultures. And in addition to that, the rhythms and the melodic and the maqams that come from the Middle Eastern world, he mixes that into scores that are more traditionally, European music scales. But he also puts in a whole lot of experimental instruments, some of which I don't even remember because they're so bizarre and they're just, inventions. But one of them is not that old. In fact, it's the first electronic instrument, which is the theremin. He's used the theremin, and it's extraordinary what it does in the context of an orchestra. It's so thrilling because of its unusual sound. And it's completely electronic, but it sounds like a human voice, actually. It's so fantastic. So it's that mixing and melding of these different cultures that come in there. It just makes this, like what the Turks call çorba, the soup that is the world, in the music hall. And that, to me, is one of the most exciting things about music in the 21st century.
And what do you think, here being at the Bach to the Future conference, what is the relevance and importance of a conference like this? And you've also seen the encore pitches. How have you perceived that, and what is the relevance of that?
When I see the encore, the presentations, well, I'm incredibly inspired by their inspiration, because they have that youthful, energy that just, let's just put on a show. I mean, let's grab a little piece of land and, and grow stuff, or it's just this entrepreneurial spirit that is so wonderful. It's like sprouts growing on their own accord, in the soil, and they'll find a loophole in anything or a need in the community and fill it right away with very little resource, except in their brains. That the brain is the resource, and they'll eventually find the funding, because that's how it works. If you just stick with it, they'll find it. I'm finding their energy very, very infectious, because it reminds me of me, because that's how I function. I just latch onto an idea like, oh my gosh, I have to do this, and there's no way that you can tell me I can't do it. I'll find a way, and they're like that too, and that's what it takes. That's really what it takes. And I want them, this is going to extrapolate a little bit, I want them to be part of the revolution, because I think we're headed toward that, which is a good thing. We need to have revolution. Some major things have got to change.
And if you could give one advice to these young, entrepreneurial, innovative thinkers within classical music, but also all the cultural leaders and musicians listening, what would that be?
Don't stop. Just keep going. Talk to everybody. Kiss the babies like politicians do, and shake everybody's hand. Get to know everybody. Just do. The moment you're always getting in touch with people, asking for help when you need it. You just never know who is going to help you. Example, when I had my concert series in San Francisco, it was once a week, and then it was twice a week, and then it was 3 times a week as we grew. There used to be a very old man sitting in the pews in the church where we started, and he had just a dirty old raincoat, and he just looked like the most impoverished soul but he was always so grateful for those concerts, and I would always speak to him saying, oh, how are you doing today, and how was your week? And he says, this concert has just given me more energy today, and it was just always so sweet. He came along one day, and he gave me his checkbook, and he said, write yourself a check, anything you want. And I was speechless. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, how about this? And I wrote that. He says, that's fine. Do some more. So I wrote some more, and then he signed it. And then he gave me the check, and he said, and I said, thank you so much. I never saw him again.
Wow.
And me and my assistant, we tried to find him to send him a proper thank you. Address unknown came back to us. It bounced back to us, all of our mails and our emails as well. Although I don't know if he was on email, but we would send him something on paper. We couldn't find him, so we just figured that was one of his dying wishes. You never know who is going to step up for you.
And I think this funnels perfectly into the last question. What is the power of music?
Oh, it's vibrational. It's all about vibrations. It's math you can't see, but you can feel it. And this is why everybody listens to it, because they get a vibrational charge from it. It doesn't matter what the genre is. Drumming gives you this foundational vibration that you can feel in your bones, in your feet, in your heart, and it's just overwhelming. And then when you're witnessing great singers who have these, like the Wagnerians, for instance, or even great pop singers, who have lots of them, who when you hear them live, it's different than on a track. It's very different. But when you hear them live in the acoustic, not only do they is the voice coming at you with the vibration of the voice and the performer's body, but it's the feedback from the acoustical properties of the room, and so you get a triple whammy of vibrations, and it will make you sweat and cry and just go crazy. Example from my life: I went to a concert. This was a concert of a great Wagnerian singer, Birgit Nilsson, who came when I was a student at Eastman School of Music in New York. She came to sing with the local Philharmonic, and she sang a great Verdi aria, and she sat on a high B, in her voice, and just, it was like electricity going through my body. And I started to sweat and cry, and I thought, what's happening to me? And I realized it was her voice, in that room that was, penetrating my flesh completely. Years later, I'm already a performer. I'm doing a concert in some little college in Pennsylvania, and I'm singing the Mozart Alleluia, which has a high C at the end. And so I da, 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 and I do the last two notes, and what was the high C was the next to last note. Somebody in the back row just threw up her hands and screamed. And I said, oh my gosh, maybe she's sick or something. Anyway, so I finished, and we were back in the room after the concert, and she came up to me and she said, I want to apologize to you. She said, I'm so sorry, but your high note sent me into an ecstasy. And I said, I completely understand. That's the power of the human voice.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Next, I will be joined by Carsten Dure, a longtime journalist and the founder and chief editor of several magazines, including Pianoforte and Piano News.
Thank you so much for joining us for the podcast. First, what has been your journey into music and the music industry?
Well, the first contact to music I for sure had, like everybody who was born in the beginning of the 1960s, with pop music. And I was coming from a household where classical music was not at all present, but my parents thought that it belongs to a kind of good education. So at this time you start with recorder, and I did it too long. 4 years recorder, and I almost felt like not going on with making music. And then there was a very strange leader of the music school, because he asked me then, okay, what instrument you want to play? And I said, saxophone. And he said, well, then you have to learn to play the clarinet. I hated clarinet, so is there another instrument? And he said, I said, well, I would like to play the organ. And he said, yeah, then you have to play the piano first. And there it started. I started to play the piano. I was a very bad scholar. Somewhere after years, I suddenly, because my piano teacher was somebody I adored, I thought, okay, this should be the way for me. And I started to practice like crazy. And I started to go to classical music concerts with a friend who played violin. We were strangers in our class, and so it all started. And then, like I told on the panel, I started when I was 13 with the piano, then 3 years of bad practicing, and so even then I tried with 18 to go into the Hochschule for being educated as a pianist, and it didn't work out. And I'm very happy about that nowadays, because I studied musicology and I loved it.
What did you especially love about it?
To get a glimpse of the variety of classical music and how everything in this classical music world is over the centuries and is interconnected, because the wider public thinks in draws, Baroque, Renaissance probably still, Baroque music, classical music, romantic music. And if you ask them, so where does it start for you? They don't know exactly, and then you say, yeah, but there was something before. People like Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, do you know him? And did you ever listen to his music? How modern it is, And I learned that everything is somehow interconnected. And when we nowadays talk about modern music, which is a very strange term anyhow, we mean contemporary music. I always have a good example, and which I took over from Arnold Schoenberg, who said when he was criticized in the beginning how he composes, he said, perform my first string quartet together with Beethoven's Große Fuge and you will see how traditional I'm composing. And it's very true, because the Große Fuge will stay modern forever, and only because the label Beethoven is there, the public is coming. Otherwise, they wouldn't hear this music at all, I think. So I had a very continuous way to go into the music. And when I studied musicology, which I did with passion, suddenly I was asked by friends, so what do you do with that? And for years, I had no answer. And then I asked all the students, so what do you do with this studies? And they said, mysteriously by that time, you go into the media. I said, what does that mean? Yeah, radio, television, or something like this. So by coincidence, I started to write for a newspaper reviews, and I stayed with this even after I had different jobs, because I was very pleased that they gave me this chance. I reviewed about 5 to 6 concerts a week for 10 years.
Wow.
Which gave a kind of good background to measure half amateur and high profile musicians on stage. Yeah.
With all that experience, what is the biggest challenge you see right now for classical music in the classical music world?
The biggest challenge is to be stronger acknowledged by worldwide politicians, to be a part of culture, which is important. Culture, I mean, not only in arts, I mean as a source of our civilization. I think this is the biggest challenge, because worldwide the politicians are more and more far from classical music and the scene. They only talk as if they would know. And I think this is the biggest challenge at all.
And what are you most excited about at this moment?
Wow, that's a difficult question. Most excited about?
Is it difficult because you're excited about so many things, or because it's not a good time to be excited?
Well, if you went through the musical world for 45 years and saw all the changes, you're becoming a little bit frustrated, negatively involved with the changes, because most of the changes are not so positive. Excited I'm about, probably I'm still excited that so many young people are still devoting their lifetime to play classical music. And it doesn't mean piano, I mean every kind of instruments, and they are burning for what they are doing, and this is unbelievable to see. On one hand, on the other hand, they are still thinking of, because they are taught normally by older professors who were raised in a time where everything was a little bit better. And I think they have a funny, childish kind of view what they have to expect in after the studies, when the real life is kicking in.
And we've also witnessed young musicians giving their pitches for the Encore program. What is your view on these pitches, and did you feel it was inspirational, or what is your thoughts?
Well, I was positively astonished because almost all of them had a kind of idea which is mainly said for outreach, going out into the society with their classical music and the love to it to make it a better world, and this was very good to see. But on the other hand, they are still very young and they have ideas. And I talked now to two of them, and they are not aware after the idea how to go the next step, that they have to write something on paper to present it, in a way that a promoter, somebody is interested in it. This is a lack which I found also in the education of musical students. They have all this management subjects in the conservatories, but if you look to their programs, it's mainly shit, because it's not run by people who know how the real world outside is. And this is a big problem and a challenge to change this drastically and fast. Otherwise, you are having highly educated instrumentalists or singers, but nobody who can, as a freelancer, to survive in the reality.
To end with a positive note, what is the power of music?
Well, I think that the power of music is the power of classical music. I have to precise it a little bit. I think classical music is, or good classical music, there is also bad and good, has a certain kind of complex structure which makes your brain think differently, and your emotions are involved differently than other music, because it's not easy to digest. And I think because of this and the interchange about this makes, in the end, yes, I believe, the society and then the world a better place. And this is the power of music.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lastly, I will be joined by Sanda Vojkovic, a musicology graduate and art historian, fulfilling a number of executive functions in the music life of Croatia.
So I'm working in classical music, a little bit jazz also, but classical music field for the whole working period. So I was editor-in-chief at the print magazine Cantus. It is only a music magazine in Croatia. Actually, it was, because it's closed down. And then I was also general manager of the music production at the Croatian National Radio Television. And today I'm working as a consultant at the Unison, which is an umbrella organization for musicians in Croatia, and running my own independent label and production house. So after the whole life working in the music field, today I think that is a really thing which is worth to work and to spend efforts and money and time, is working with young musicians, young people who just start to live with music, and I really think that they need help them to find their way to, in those circumstances, in those time, they really need much more knowledge, and not only to survive, but to find way to present their music and live in this music world.
And what do you think for young artists are the biggest challenges nowadays?
Yeah, because all of us think that new digital era actually give them more possibilities, which is true, but it's also more possibility to fall. So how do you find the right balance? And I also always think that you need knowledge and practice, and after that you can find the right way for you, because each of them has something different. But there's some people say, okay, there is no so many talented people, but I don't think so, because it's really, you can find really very, very talented and young people who really want to live that life, because it's not only education, that's life which is really, really something special. So I think that they need help, because after they finish their music academies, they just start of their working process. So today, that is a challenge is much stronger and in different way than it used to be. But I still think that it's possible to find a right balance between, that's really artists and really, really life who is actually those young artists will have, or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And I know you spoke on the first panel today here at Bach to the Future conference. What is your experience here at the conference, and do you think these kind of experiences are very important to share with each other?
I think that is especially those subjects about the classical music in media around Europe. So those really different from country to country. So for sure the bigger countries has maybe, I'm not sure, but maybe it's easier way, because they have something traditionally which is go on. In a small country like in Croatia is a little bit more challenging, because there is really audience is getting so smaller and tighter, and especially after the COVID situation. So all the audience, which is actually, I think, a very good audience for the classical programming, because they are really wants to go to the concert, and they are going to the concert. So they are going from 60 to 80 to concert, so that you have an audience who is going to the concert for 20 years. And I really think that for that audience you need to do some efforts to not promote, because they know actually about the concert, but to choose programs which they like it. On the other hand, there are a young generation who prefer to hear not concert, movements, or maybe composition on those mobile phones. Okay, so that's also something which is in this time okay. But on the other hand, I think that we should do something, and that something doesn't mean that you should, mix different style, which is at the end not a classical music we used to think about it. But we need to find some new ways which could be interesting for them. And we also heard here at the conference some young people with some young new projects which are very interesting because they really exchange ideas, but really think about some for us very traditional way of promoting music, and I really like it. So because it means that they think that music will be their future, and that's nice.
And if you look at everything that's happening in classical music and around the world, what are you most excited about? Which development?
Development. I don't like to say that it's a development because that's exchange. Because today I couldn't think about music without Bach and Mozart and Beethoven. So today I don't see any development because after Bach, all those is variation. But since I was working for more than 15 years in Zagreb Music Biennale, so it's a contemporary music festival established in '63 by Milko Kelemen, one of the Croatian well-known contemporary composers. It was really, really interesting pieces. So at the end, I think that is a good music and other music. So in every field you can really find fantastic pieces, and that's great because you really can choose it and you can listen it, or you can produce it or perform it or whatever, and you have really I think that for me is a really good thing that classical music is not run out of time, so you can have it, and then you can choose maybe a little bit better or maybe a little bit different performances, but at the end, so that's something which is here, and that's nice. That's nice.
And the last question: what is the power of music?
So for me, because I think that is at the end is very personal thing. I mean that is a power to change myself. I really think that in some situation, my life situation, some music, not all, some special music just helped me to think about it or to survive it or whatever and make me different. When I have some problems, I really can find some answers in music. So this is a power. The power is that you can live with them, work with them. It's always nice to find performers, artists who is really collaborate with you and you together make something which is maybe just a moment, but that moment is a fantastic. So that is, and for that moment, you would like to live. So for me, when I don't do anything, that's happened something new for 2 or 3 months, then I have something feeling that you have a problem. So maybe I became ill or something. So after that, you just need to involve in some music performance, production, whatever.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
thank you very much for listening. If you want more information about JM or you would like to get involved, visit www.jmi.net. At JMI, we are on a mission to make the world more musical. That's why we created Mubazar, a digital platform that helps us manage all our musical activities across 80 countries worldwide, connecting musicians with opportunities to grow both personally and professionally. If you are a music professional looking for a better way to manage and promote your music activities, check out Mubazar. Created for music organizers, by music organizers, Mubazar allows you to run music competitions, workshops, camps, auditions, masterclasses, awards, events, and much more. With a massive list of music-specific features, Mubazar offers custom application forms, payments for your activities, jury tools, translations, analytics, and more. Mubazar is fast becoming the best place for musicians to find and apply for music opportunities online, and you can sign up today for a free organizer account by going to www.mubazar.com, registering, and then requesting to upgrade to an organizer on the right-hand menu. For more info, don't hesitate to get in touch via support@mubazar.com. It would mean a lot to us if you could give us 1 minute of your time and rate and review the podcast. In case you have any suggestions or would like to be one of our next guests, feel free to reach out to us through the JMI socials.